Ladies and gentlemen, brothers, sisters, comrades, welcome to Caerphilly for the first Baugh Pro Memorial meeting. Bob was described as a working class hero, and our lineup tonight includes people who have the same drive and passion as Bob. They are all people who work tirelessly to help their members fight adversity and promote the trade union cause. In a time when TU rights are being eroded and laws are being changed by this government that is anti-trade union, do anything they can to destroy this movement, and we need to promote solidarity and membership. All our speakers will have a maximum of 8 minutes to speak. Chris will have a few minutes longer due to the fact that he is the Assistant General Secretary of a major trade union, and I'm a member of PCS as well. And if Marian's strict with the timings, we'll have some questions and a good discussion at the end, and we aim to finish for 9 o'clock. Okay. Right, our first speaker is Steve Skelly from RMT Bridgend, Llantrisant District Branch Secretary. Steve?
Thanks, brothers and sisters, and thanks for the invitation to attend this evening. I want to first pay tribute to the Trades Council. It's a fantastic initiative, and I'm deeply honoured to be here. I'm honoured to be here, as I say, at the inaugural Baugh Memorial meeting, but I'm sure comrades in this room, every one of you would agree that if there's any justice in the world, we wouldn't be here tonight, and Bob would still be with us. But the reality is he isn't. For those who don't know me, I served on the Council of Executives between 2013 and 2015. I've been the branch secretary of Bridgend, Llantrisant District Branch, which affiliates to the Trades Council for I think about 10 years. So I had the honour of serving with Bob, and I served alongside Bob, and I was obviously on the executive when the tragic news came that he passed away. But I also knew Bob on a personal level. I knew Bob as a young Bob from my early days, when I was about 10 years old. So I knew him right, and him and my dad were extremely close friends. So really speaking, I think it's important to speak about Bob, because that's what we're here for in a lot of ways. So the 11th of March 2014 was a day that we'll never forget. I arrived in London. I was informed of the terrible news that Bob had passed, and I just couldn't believe really what I was hearing. It was dreadful. So many of my family, my close friends were just in absolute abject agony, and there was not a thing I could do to resolve that or to make it better. To me, Bob was a combination of things. He was almost like an uncle. He was a friend. He was a mentor. And to be honest with you, I didn't really think about it until he was dead. But he was my hero. And I didn't realise that at the time. I'm sure a lot of people in this room sympathise with that point of view. He was a true working class hero. That was what he was all about. It was massive grief, but Bob's character was a larger than life character. And one of the things that cheered me up that day, and I always try to tell people this because it puts a bit of light on the situation, was the story. You had all this outpouring of grief for him. And about 2-3 days later, I found out that there's a little barber shop down the road from the head office. And what happened was, there was a guy in there, mid-haircut, he said something disparaging about Bob, and he was glad he was dead or something. And the barber's friends just said, "Get out." Threw him out mid-haircut. So you just imagine what that look was like in the streets. And the other story as well about Bob, when he was at a meeting in the Celtic Manor, he bumped in. Some guy walks up to him and said, "I think it's great what you've done at this hotel." He thought it was Terry Matthews. I said, "What happened, Bob?" He said, "Well, he bought me a pint, didn't he?" Bob just took it. You know, that was the type of character he was, and he was a larger-than-life guy. But I did think, to be honest with you, in those immediate days after Bob passed, that we were called into the boardroom the next day, and I thought we'd finished. I just genuinely thought, this is it. It's game over. The union's going to shut up shop. But Mick Cash was there, and he said we needed to carry on. Bob would have wanted that. I think that's what was important that we did. And I think what this whole meeting is all about, it's about moving on. We've had our tragedy, we've all had our ups and downs, but it's all about moving on, and for the sake of the movement and our class and our cause. And I believe Bob, in respect of the RMT, would be rightly proud of how the union's moved on. We've got a new General Secretary now, Mick Cash, and we've got a new AGS in Mick Lynch, and we have the current Senior Assistant General Secretary, Steve Headley. And I want to pay tribute to their leadership over these last couple of years. I think they've done a fantastic job in the most trying of circumstances. We've continued to grow as a union, and we continue to advocate the class, the causes of working class people, both within our respective industries and on a wider level. And to be clear, there's absolutely no deviation from our RNT policy. We're at the forefront of the fight against the interests of capital, of the capitalist class. The union paid tribute to Bob, the best way forward in my opinion. We renamed our education centre, the Bob Education Centre, in August of last year, as a fitting tribute to a man that placed a huge emphasis on the necessity of working class education. You know, Bob was an inspirational leader. He was once in a generation leader, but he was a very humble man. He believed that collective strength was what it wasn't about individuals, and we should never lose sight of that. To be frank, if Bob was here today, he wouldn't want us reminiscing about him. All he'd be interested in saying, what are we doing to fight back? What are we doing to further the interests of our class? It's as simple as that. That is what this is all about. It's about what we're going to do to take our movement forward. Bob's class-based analysis was exactly right. He believed that class was essential. We are engaged in an all-out class war against a capitalist class who represent their people. Whatever you think of the Tories, they are absolutely excellent for their class. And that's what we need to do. We need to carry on representing our class. And Bob did that to his dying day. And we should honour that and carry that on. Look, people are shocked out in the wider media by these Panama scandals and these bribery and corruption and so on. I'm not. That's what these people are all about. They are brilliant at what they do. They represent their people, right? But the important question is from this, and this is a question to you, how are we going to combat this all-out assault? And the trade union leadership in general need to understand it. Bob understood that, and that's the questions we need to ask. They know what they're doing, and we need to get our act together and do that in retaliation, if you like, from that. We've got the trade union bill that's coming through at the moment. The reality is we've had 9 years of anti-trade union legislation. Are you interested in token gestures, amendments to legislation bills? The reality is they should repeal every single piece of anti-trade union legislation and working class people that have suffered. Let's not lose sight of that. Simple as that. 2 minutes left, I'll be very quick.
No.
We've got anyway, look, we're under a massive attack. Working class people are under attack. You've got crippling austerity. You've got the tar and steel workers. And I just want to express my complete and utter support for both the tar workers and any working class people under attack in this country. I fully support the call for renationalisation, but I go a bit further than that. Renationalise every single state industry you've got. Every single one. The reality is simple. Privatisation has brought one thing: profiteering, mass profits, and reduced services for working class people elsewhere. Bring back the lot, and let's have a society run by the people for the interests of the people. It's as simple as that. There's currently more wealth than has ever been known in the history of mankind, but it's concentrated in the 1%. It's concentrated in the 1%, and we need to take that forward, and we need to fight for a better future. Look, we've got some positives, and I think Bob would be rightly proud of this. We've got Jeremy Corbyn's elected as Labour Party leader. An excellent progressive step forward for working people. We're now in the throes. If he was alive today, he would have been campaigning for an exit from the EU. I know people have got different opinions on that, but I'll be clear. We advocate an exit from the EU, but on the basis of socialist policies and principles. And he'd be galvanised by the growing anger amongst working people for the lie that have been sold for the last 40 years by the Tory and the Labour administrations. I think overall, a part of us died the day that Bob died. For me personally, he was a massive support. I miss him every day. And I just hope one day I'll get the opportunity to repay the faith that he showed me, and I'll continue to fight to do that. Bob was a massive loss, but he lived his life under the motto: the past we inherit, the future we build. He was always looking to the next generation to carry on the fight. He's no longer with us now, but we owe it to him to carry the fight forward and build a better and more decent society for all. Thanks so much for the invitation. It's much appreciated, and let's take the fight to the Tories. Simple.
Right, thank you, Steve. Our next speaker is AJ.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. My name is Amarjite Singh. I'm a branch secretary for the Communication Workers Union in Cardiff. I cover quite a large area in as much from my steg Bridgend up to Merthyr and Aberdare. I've been branch secretary for 9 years, and I've got a number of other positions within the trade union movement, and if I sort of went through them, I'd probably take 8 minutes there. But, you know, we're here to give our respects to Baugh, and, you know, Caerphilly being one of the, you know, a new trades council in the South Wales, and taking this opportunity to do this tonight, I think is, you know, very respectful to Bob, and I think it's a good starting point for Caerphilly Trades Council as we want to go on. And I had the pleasure of being on the TUC JCC for Wales for a number of years, and Bob for a number of years was actually the chairperson for the TUC JCC, and I had pleasure of following Bob on a roster many times at the TUC Congress, and especially for the voice of the trades councils. Bob was always on the side of the trades councils, and he always wanted to give the voice to the trades councils on the TUC Congress to move their own motion. In Wales, we're lucky that we do have, to a certain extent, that we do have a voice in the Wales TUC conference, but even that's been eroded slowly. But Bob, you know, Bob was a fighter, you know, and I relate to Bob looking back to my early days when I started working as an apprentice on the building sites in the late 70s, and remember, you know, looking back at what happened to the miners and the steel industries, and what the trade union actually stood by and did. You know, let's be honest, the trade unions stood by and let the coal industry and the steel industry go down the leg side. You know, TUC did not use his arm when they needed to. Financially supported the miners, but didn't actually get anybody on the streets. And I think they were the pinnacle times of our times when the turning point was where the Conservative government seen the trade union as a weak point, and they attacked us. And by attacking us, we are where we are today. And I think with the trade union bill, and I don't often agree with Steve, but I think Steve is right. You know, it isn't something new that's happened to us. Even the Labour government took rights away from working class people. You know, I've been in the Labour Party ever since I've been a trade unionist. I've always voted Labour since I left school. On a principle, I always wanted to change the Labour Party. And as Steve says, you know, we've got Jeremy Corbyn in place, and just hope we can sort of put the force behind Jeremy and get him into 10 Downing Street and reverse some of the policies that are being put in place. But I think it's important that the attacks are coming fast and fearful. And I think as a trade union movement, we have to make sure that we stand firm with our other trade unions in their fight. And if you look at Tata Steelworks, it's only now the government is saying that they will partially privatise, partly bring in-house the steel industry, because it's had pressure put on them. But we just, like Steve says, we just don't want it just to be bought in partly. We want the whole industry bought back, and other privatisation companies that have been privatised as well. Like myself, I've worked for Raw Mill for 30 years. You know, if you look what they've done to Raw Mill, right? They've split up the Raw Mill from the post office counters. They've decimated the post office counters. You know, where especially elderly and vulnerable people depended on the post offices. They've actually decimated them. They've closed down post offices and put them into corner shops in a corner. If you look at Raw Mill, 100% privatised Raw Mill, you know, we've got the hedge funds sitting on the sidelines, just rubbing their hands for their profits. They don't care for the workers, you know, as long as they get their monies at the end of the year, part of their dividends. That's all they care about. So I think it's important that we don't let ourselves repeat what happened in the 80s. You know, if if one industry is being affected, junior doctors, we should be supporting the junior doctors. You know, if you look at the PCS in the museums, you know, we're being attacked from all sides. National Health Service being privatised through the back door, let's be honest. Privatised in front of our eyes. But we as trade unions, right, and I think this is a message to Congress House in London. They need to get off their backs. They need to get off their backs and start organising. You know, they've got a policy there that I believe they haven't acted upon. Bob used to believe in that policy, that yes, we should be looking at a point where we need to go all out. And until then, I don't think we will make a difference. And just to give a bit of advertising, 30th of April in Cardiff, the Cardiff Trades Council is organised a May Day rally. Yeah? Solidarity. We'd like to see you all there supporting our rally. Thank you for listening, and over to you.
Thank you, AJ. And next we've got Chris Baugh, who's the PCS Assistant General Secretary.
Okay, well, first of all, thanks very much, comrades, for the invitation, and I suppose the preferential treatment for getting a bit longer than everybody else. But I mean, it is a great privilege to come along. I've tried to sort of mix it with a bit of pleasure as well, visiting the big pit today, because I think the first and obvious point in bringing solidarity from PCS is it's completely consistent with celebrating the ideas and the practice of Bob Crow, because unfortunately in this world it's often an idea bandied around, it's a nice word, but it goes beyond that. It's not just some utopian idea. Solidarity is our most powerful weapon against those that seek to divide us, and nobody understood that better than Bob Crow. I mean, look at how the RMT used its industrial leverage in a fragmented, cutthroat industry to extract some of the best terms and conditions, but yet Bob always understood that the industrial struggle could not deliver for our class. It was part of a much wider political struggle, and it's why I'm so pleased to be in this area, to visit the big pit, to talk to the now PCS members, former NUM members, you know, built the NUM in South Wales, across the UK, built on the principle of solidarity. I think one of the best ways of sort of making the point is that it's a sort of play on the scene in the Monty Python's Life of Brian, where one of the agitators, I think it's a popular front of Judea, he says, you know, asks the question, what have the Romans ever done for us? And then there's a whole list. Well, there's a couple of really good spoofs. A YouTube spoof. RMT, I think, actually produced it, and it's some hard-faced manager in the rail industry, sat with all the managers sat around him, you know, slagging off the RMT, what a pain they are, and he asks the question, well, what have they ever actually done? So, of course, somebody chirps up, well, maternity leave? Yeah, all right, you know, pensions? Yeah, all right, representation at work? You get my point, because there's a contradiction when you talk about trade unions, because we're constantly told that it's a relic of the past, it's outlived its usefulness, it's not consistent with a modern capitalist economy, and yet, at the same time, why did the media spend so much time slagging off Bob? Why did they indulge in so many personal attacks? Why do they never report the unsung practical work that trade unions do? Why do they only ever talk about industrial action? As if it's some, you know, attack on democracy, when any measure of democracy, look at UN, look at European court decisions, any concept of a democratic society means unions having the right to organise, the right to assemble, and yes, the right to withdraw their labour and take industrial action if the employer is not prepared to listen. And of course, why would they saddle us with the most, to quote Tony Blair, the most repressive anti-union laws in Western Europe? And there was a law lord's judgment awarded against Unite about 3 years ago, where, in the words of the senior legal officials, they said, under employment law in the UK, it must be remembered that the right to strike is little more than a slogan or a legal metaphor. And yet they're now about to introduce a new wave of legislation, described, I should say, by in a letter of all the leading academics in the industrial relations field. They describe this as the most sustained attack on trade union and worker rights since the combination laws of the 1830s and the early 19th century. So, in answering the question, how do we resolve that contradiction? That they tell us unions are irrelevant, they attack us for what we try and do, and yet they spend so much time. And the reason and the answer to that question is, of course, they still fear union power. They look at what the RMT have been able to achieve. They look at the example of workers taking action that it sets for others. They're fearful of the strike of the junior doctors. You can see them already wavering, and they're fearful of any industrial action that members take. They're fearful of the success that we had in PCS in the National Gallery, in confronted with a privatisation, where we didn't stop the privatisation, but we extracted the most solid protection, a nuts and bolts job of union recognition and bargaining rights and the protection of our members' terms and conditions, and we got the rep who'd been sacked midway through that dispute, got their job back. I can cite many other examples from PCS perspective. We stopped the privatisation of the land registry. Reference was made to the dispute that's going on in the Museum of Wales. Again, a marvellous example of solidarity. They've been confronted, and it's to the eternal shame of some of the Welsh Labour ministers that the chief executive can go in the media threatening to sack people if they don't sign up to individual contracts. And his argument is that because the grant from Welsh Labour to the Museum of Wales has been cut and we can't live within it, his answer is to cut £70,000 a month by targeting the lowest paid and removing the weekend premiums. Now, our members are absolutely rock solid. They'll be out over the next couple of days. It's great to see the influence of the former NUM members of the Big Pit, the impact that they have in touring all the museum sites and helping build up the sense of confidence that's needed to win in a particular industrial dispute. But I cite the fact we've just won in Scotland almost identical dispute. The Museum of Scotland, as a result of industrial action, the SNP found another 1.2 million. Again, it's not out of the goodness of the heart. Nothing is ever from the employer's goodness of the heart. Nothing is ever gifted or falls from the sky. Everything that we have has been won through struggle. And that really is the lesson, not just of history, but how we approach the future. And that example in Scotland, of course, can only encourage our members in Wales as well to maintain that sense of solidarity. Now, of course, I just really want to finish by saying that the point is we have to dispel, in practice, the attempts to divide us and undermine confidence about the capacity of the working class to fight back. And there's no doubt about it that over the last 20, 30 odd years, we were told that the decimation of the manufacturing, the closure of all the supportive sectors like coal and steel, anti-union laws, a deregulated so-called free market capitalism would produce economic prosperity for all. Then suddenly, there's a financial crash on the scale of 1929. Then they find unimaginable amounts of money that we later find out was ours, that bails them out, that then creates a deficit that then becomes the pretext for the biggest attack on all the social gains won by the working class, particularly in the post-war years. And my point being, and it comes back, I think, to the theme of all the speakers that have spoken tonight. What we've got to do is, yes, recognise we've come out of a very, very difficult period over the last 20, 30 years, and it's important to learn the lessons of history, but I think it's equally important to recognise that at 6.5 million, the British trade union movement, the biggest voluntary organisation in Britain today, has still enormous latent power. And I think it's incumbent on the trade unions, yes, to learn the lessons of history, but to replicate the marvellous example of the young people coming forward in particular, the Corbyn phenomena, the situation in Scotland, which galvanised young people around the referendum debate. The events that you see, I never thought I'd see it in my lifetime, of a socialist in the United States packing out stadiums. I mean, it's almost incredible to see what is happening. Events in France, attack on the labour laws. Again, there's the usual media blackout. You get a little snip if there's a clash with the police. But that is a hugely significant. It's not confined to just young people. It's spread amongst unions and the wider class. There is something deeply, subterranean going on as a result of the exploitation that workers, not just in the UK, but across the world, have been subjected to over the last 15 and 20 years. And my point is that the most important ingredient here is to recognise our power, to recognise our successes, how tax justice, from my own union's perspective, Cameron and the rest of them, and I think the campaign we've waged, working with the Tax Justice Network, exposing the fact that we lose £125 billion a year to the public purse as a result of tax avoidance and tax evasion and uncollected tax in the department that is now seeing massive office closures and thousands of our members, their jobs are being now placed in jeopardy. So my point being that we've got to recognise our latent power, we've got to recognise our successes, but we've also got to see this as an opportunity to say that what sort of world do we want to live in? It's not just about saying what we're against. This is an opportunity to make the case for trade unionism, to win young workers back into the ranks of the trade union movement, to build the coordinated industrial action, not just in the public sector, but across the private and the public sector. The only people, it seems to me, that are reticent on the idea of coordinated action, unfortunately, are some other union leaders. You talk to workers in trade unions, they are receptive to the idea, why do we take action independently when we would have so much more power if we took action collectively? And it's an opportunity to start posing questions of public ownership that are thrown in stark relief as a result of the threatened the closure in Port Talbot, and exposing the power of international capital. But who'd have thought an arch-Thatcherite who slagged off interventionism at every opportunity has now been forced to be part, as others have said, to a possible part nationalisation. But again, as others have said, that's not enough. It poses much wider questions about public ownership. Not the top-down command and control concept of nationalisation that we've seen, but democratic forms of public ownership at a municipal level, across energy supply, across manufacturing, and across society in general. There is a word for that, actually. I would suggest that that word is socialism. And it's now back, for the first time, I think, for many, many years. The ideas of socialism are now back on the agenda, and that, I think, has a powerful echo, will have a powerful echo, and can rebuild the strength of the labour movement that we've seen in decline for far too long, and most importantly, challenge the sense of fatalism and defeatism that has also stood in the way of organising the struggle that I suspect everybody in this room wants to see and is committed to. So, thanks very much for listening.
Thank you, Chris. Right, next we have Clare Gibbs of the University College Union.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Sisters and brothers, I'd like to extend my thanks to Caerphilly Trades Council for inviting me. My name is Clare Gibbs and I'm branch chair of College of Cymoedd, which is a local FE college. And we would like to extend our solidarity to steelworkers across the UK and support the call for the full and immediate renationalisation of the industry to safeguard jobs and communities. And UCU is completely opposed to the heinous anti-trade union bill, which is a clear attack on our unions and our ability to mobilise, which weakens the defence of our members against intransigent employers. As lecturers, the proposals around the use of agency staff are very, very problematic. We are highly specialised professionals and work can't be covered by others without serious impact on the quality of learners' education and their health and safety, and we must resist it. Sometimes we have to use our full armoury, and that can involve industrial action. And if the defence of education isn't one of those times, then I don't know what is. Now, since incorporation in 1992, whereby universities and further education colleges were taken out of local authority control, there has been a sustained and ideological attack on working class education. Now, we've seen extortionate tuition fees, the abolition of EMA in England, our open university regional centres, adults and community learning centres being closed, and now we've experienced swinging cuts in further education. And I think it's no exaggeration to say we are facing the fight of our lives. And I think the Labour movement needs to be at the forefront, defending the very idea of lifelong learning and everyone's entitlement to an education. Now, for several years, college workers, in addition to the rest of the public sector, have paid a very high price for a mismanaged economy and a crisis caused by bankers. We've experienced daylight robbery of our pensions, with working longer, paying more, and receiving less. And in further education, we've experienced a 20% pay cut in real terms over the last few years, a squeeze in teaching hours, with pressures of delivering more in less time, and increasing micromanagement. Now, if this wasn't bad enough, a Welsh Labour government, who say their hands are tied by the Tories in Westminster, have launched a barbaric act of vandalism on the very ethos of further education. 2013 saw the reduction of 65 million from the post-16 budget, followed by 26 million last year, and we're experiencing those cuts now. Colleges are being forced to cut course hours, increase class sizes, and reduce staff. We lost 800 lecturers across Wales last year. Now, we're told that education is an integral part of a competitive economy in Wales, and that FE has to deliver on any given skills gap identified by employers. So the 50% slash in part-time adult education is ridiculous and affects some of the most vulnerable, marginalised and low-paid learners. At my college, the access to HE provision has been axed, and other part-time courses are now only available at full cost recovery. So we're pricing out the learners who need to access those opportunities. And this is going to have far-reaching and damaging consequences for adults and their families and for the economic recovery of Wales. And whilst lecturers are attacked and learners' courses are cut, principals' pay is skyrocketing. Many principals now earn more than the First Minister and the Prime Minister, and last year one of them gave themselves a 47% pay rise. Now, this is when we are being offered 0%, or with the threat of industrial action, a derisory 1%. Now, I've been privileged to witness the empowering effect a return to education as an adult can have. And I think attacking adult education is misguided morally and economically. And any government, whether Labour in Cardiff or the Tories in Westminster, should be ashamed of itself for writing off a section of society because they didn't achieve when they were 18. I think maybe because an election is looming, or because Welsh Government realise how badly FE has been affected, Welsh Labour has announced several funding streams that colleges can apply for, and a couple of % increase in funding. But this in no way dents what we've lost. FE must be funded properly. Now, under Leighton Andrews, FE colleges were classified as NPISH status, which goes a stage further than incorporation. It means non-profit institution serving households, which is a bit of a mouthful. But it basically means that the planning and strategic management of all colleges are now carried out by a governing body and the principal, who now likes to call themselves a CEO. In my view, this lacks accountability and transparency and could lead to the complete privatisation of the FE sector. We are already seeing colleges setting up subsidiaries and private companies. In my view, if we're to save further education, we need to ensure that colleges are disincorporated and return to local authority control. It's only then can we ensure that an institution so vital for our communities meets the needs of the people it serves. Market forces have no place in education. Now, the importance of further education and working class education transcends the parameters of my union, the UCU. And I think it's an issue for all trade unionists and community activists. And we need your support more than ever. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Clare. And now, last but not least, we've got Rob Williams, the chair of the National Shop Stewards Network.
Thanks, comrades. I've just got some sad news, really, which I only found out during the meeting. But a young RMT activist in London Underground, Liam Brewman, I think AJ might know him as well, passed away. I think it's either today or last night, but he's passed away. I think he's got a young daughter. Two young daughters, so really sad news, and I'm sure people who knew him will really miss him. And this is a sort of memorial meeting, but I certainly would like to remember Leon and also offer condolences to his family and also support to the RMT. Now, this is a memorial meeting for Bob Crow, but in the best spirit of the labour and trade union movement. It's not a we're not remembering Bob, just by looking back at his past, if you like. It's remembering his past, it's remembering his example for the struggles that are present and in the future. Now, I'm speaking tonight really mainly on what's happening in the steel industry, my hometown really, in Talbot, which really is on the edge as we speak. Well, let's say this about tonight. We do not want a memorial meeting about the steel industry, whether it be in Talbot, South Wales, or the rest of the UK. We don't want another plucky loser. We don't want another industry going to the wall. We certainly do not want to come out of this with a great industry and thousands of workers and their families going to the wall on this, because this is a struggle, comrades, that can be won. I was staying at I live in London now, I was staying at my mother's last night. I woke up, she's got a Daily Mirror, and it's on the front page, in the corner of the front page, claiming a victory. Well, I think we have to have a balanced approach, but let's be clear, the announcement that Chris talked about of part nationalisation of 25% at this stage is a partial victory, because not just this Tory government, but unfortunately the Welsh Assembly government were ruling out nationalisation. I mean, I came down a few weeks ago because the National Shop Stewards Network organised a demonstration in Talbot. Hundreds of people came to that demonstration, and then we found out there was a lobby of the Special Welsh Assembly recall session on the Monday, and when I went to sleep on the Sunday night, Cameron Jones had ruled out nationalisation. By the Monday morning, he was supporting nationalisation, and when we had the protest outside the Welsh Assembly building, then what was interesting was that all the Welsh Assembly members, obviously none of the Tories came to speak, but the other speakers came up, and they were all supporting renationalisation, at least on a temporary basis, to bail that out. Now, there's so many things that can be said. Obviously, there's people here, we live not too far from Ebervale, and of course we don't want Talbot or Clechley or Newport or other places up and down the country to go the same way as Ebervale, and therefore I think there is huge potential here to, like I say, win a victory. And really, the National Shop Stewards Network took a decision really to throw ourselves into this campaign because, as I say, this is a battle, you know, we can't afford to lose, but we can afford to win. And I make it clear, our demand from the very beginning wasn't simply save our steel, it was nationalise Tata, because for us, that is the only way that we can save this the steel industry. And I want to make this clear as well, because it is fantastic to have a Labour leadership, Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell, talking about supporting workers in strike action, and not just talking about it, but have supported workers in strike action, and to raise the idea of nationalisation. But I would say they need to go further than what they're causing at the moment, which is temporary nationalisation. It's almost, well, if everything else fails. I think they need to be a lot bolder and make it quite clear, actually. We want Tata Steel UK nationalised en bloc permanently, and we want it nationalised as part of the all-round strategy that comrades have talked about on this platform, with the renationalisation of the railways, the renationalisation of the energy companies as well. And I have to say, Steve, your members who have been to every protest in Parliament, every meeting, because of course we make the point, it is RMT members and ASLEF members will lose their jobs if the steelworks close as well, alongside the steel workers as well. Now, this issue of nationalisation, I think, is absolutely fundamental to this issue, and because the dangers are that the company, Tata Steel UK, involving 15,000 workers, is, as we speak, being split up and divided and sold off in parcels. And of course, the second biggest steelworks in Scunthorpe, at the minute, there's a deal being prepared and on its way for them to be sold off to Grable Capital. Now, I think we have to be very, very careful about that. I totally understand steelworkers who will see a change of ownership if they see that as the only opportunity they get to keep their jobs, to keep their works open. They will grab that opportunity. But, you know, the people who are trying to buy Scunthorpe have got previous, they are so-called turnaround experts. And one of the most successful turnarounds they were involved with is Monarch Airlines. And Monarch Airlines had already had redundancies and pay cuts, and there's pay cuts on the table here. But last week, at the very time that Grable was announced as the potential owner of Scunthorpe, Monarch Airlines have announced another 100 job cuts from the same owner. I would say the best thing to do here is to bring together all those 15,000 Tata Steel employees, all the plants together, and to fight to nationalise that. Because the other issue as well is whatever owner takes over this company, the one thing they don't want to take over is the pension scheme. The Financial Times is already calling for the pension scheme to go into the Pension Protection Fund, and as someone whose pension is in the Pension Protection Fund, I can assure you it's something, but it's not everything, and workers will lose parts of their pension. Now, comments just to finish really on a couple of points here. You know, we are being told that the Tata UK is losing £1 million a day, or Talbot is losing £1 million a day, and it's too expensive. Well, my maths tell me that's £365 million a year. That's all it would take to take over that particular company. Well, if we did know the maths, it cost at least £450 billion in the British banking crisis in 2008-2009. That's how much we stamped up. It could even be £1 trillion that it took at that stage to bail out the banks. And of course, you know, to us, it's a choice that we have to pay. I think the Tories at the moment are in crisis. There have been some concessions made on the trade union bill, nothing enough, and we can defeat them on the trade union bill. Some concessions on Tata, and we can press for full-scale nationalisation. It's what the unions do now, and I would say that the best unions have to get together to put pressure on the TUC. We need a national demonstration, coordinated strike action. There's a demonstration next Tuesday in London with junior doctors and teachers that all the unions here today are supporting as well. And just finish with this point, you know, about anniversaries. On May the 4th, is the 90th anniversary of the 1926 general strike. And on the day that AJ was talking about there, when it was put to the TUC a couple of years ago, the NSSN organised a lobby of that TUC, that we should consider a general strike. It was the POA's motion, the RMT supported it. Someone got up and said, we can't do that because the last time it didn't work. Well, we should make the point that actually that wasn't strictly as clear, as simple as that. But actually, the last time there was nearly a general strike in this country, it actually did work. In 1972, when it was a general strike building from the ground that released the dockers that were jailed in Pentonville Jail in London. The issue is at the moment is that we are literally on the edge of despair and victory. We are within touching distance of some massive victories against a weak and divided government. If our movement stands up tall, we can defeat these Tories and get them out.